Hey guys, my name is Kaden Hickman, and this is my discussion 3 for our early American literature class, talking about the Puritans, democracy, exceptionalism, and pluralism. And so for number 1, it says, Review Bradford, what governing versus religious principles shape the Mayflower Compact, and why? And so the Mayflower Compact was a religious document that held claims that the people had a right to self-government. There were tensions between the secular interests and the Puritan interests. That's according to Bradford and like what he wrote. But it had both the government and religious principles, and it used both to shape it. They were coming over to make, a new government and new religion, and not be held and not be conformed by England. And so it had both of these principles, and both of them shaped it because they were wanting to create something new. For number 2, it says, what do you think that Winthrop meant when he said that America would be a city on a hill? And then name at least 3 attributes he gives to justify his society. And so the first reason that he would justify would be it's to hold conformity with the rest of his world. And so that's saying that, this will be set above, and this will be something that the rest of the world can look to and see them set apart. Secondly would be that he might have the more occasion to manifest the work of his spirit. And so that's saying that God is going to be able to work through his people truly the way that he wants to, because he is speaking to them and they're doing his work. And then thirdly, that he would justify would be that every man might have need of others. And so that way that you can come together as, one, and that you would have a community effort and a close-knit relationship with each other and be able to, serve God together and be that city that, everybody's looking at and saying, oh, I wish that we were like that, or I wish that we could do that. And what I found interesting, though, is as we were reading through this week's different readings and podcasts and videos and stuff, and one of them, Mark Peterson, says, we shall be as a city upon a hill is a phrase that is not about a glowing example for the rest of the world, but it's a phrase that describes the exposed position that the settlers are going to be in as they set out upon this venture. And I found that really interesting because a lot of times when you look at commentaries and different dissections of this work, it's always talking about how you're that city that's set apart, that you're up here, and, you're magnificent and all this stuff. But this is taking it from more of a standpoint of vulnerability. So I just thought that was really interesting that we look at this week. Number 3 says, do you think America is exceptional? If yes, do you see the country as exceptional in the same way as Winthrop did, or do you see it as different? And so I do think that the idea of America is exceptional. And I also think that what we try to stand for is exceptional. I do think sometimes we miss the mark, but that is just as it is in anything. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to have a perfect society. You're just not going to have that. But I do think that the idea of what we have is exceptional. And so Peter Onuf, I hope I'm saying that right, says, this whole issue raises one pretty basic question. What is American exceptionalism? Until a few years ago, that phrase, if not the sentiment behind it, was mostly confined to academic circles. Microsoft Word still doesn't recognize exceptionalism as a properly spelled word, but whether or not we can spell it or define it, it's clearly part of this country's political culture. And I just found that really interesting, and I really like that quote, and I think that it encompasses, it's going to be different for everybody, how everybody feels, but I do think we can come to a basis and say that it is part of our culture. Number 4 says, whether you believe America is exceptional or not, find one example in contemporary society or popular culture where the idea of America being exceptional is expressed. And so I chose the poem America by Walt Whitman, and it says, center of equal daughters, equal sons, all alike, endeared, grown, ungrown, young or old, strong, ample, fair, enduring, capable, rich, for now with the earth, with freedom, law, and love, a grand, sane, towering, seated mother, chaired in the advent of time. And so I just thought it was really cool, and I really felt that, here Walt Whitman is saying, all alike, you have grown, ungrown, young, old, you have strong, ample, fair, enduring, capable, rich, you have all these people, and, they're coming to this freedom. You're coming to this place that has law and love. And so I feel like that really encompassed exceptionalism in America. Number 5, it says, think back to the God in America video that we watched and consider the trial on Anne Hutchinson. In what days is putting Hutchinson on trial for her beliefs undermine Winthrop's vision of the city on a hill or Bradford's idea of democratic rule? And so I really appreciate, I like that video. I thought it was different, and we learn about those things, through our history classes that we've had. But I liked the detail that went into it, and you got to see a different side that you may not have seen, or at least that I didn't see in my classes. So I felt that, her being on trial goes somewhat against the point of needing help for one another, because, he wasn't helping her. But he was helping himself, so I don't know if that fits into it or not. But he's trying to say that she's wrong, and that his way is the only right way, and that, the traditional way of believing is what it needs to be. And so through that, though, he is setting the standard for this city. So there's, different sides to it that you can see. But he's also, while he is setting that standard, to be set apart and be, I guess, traditional and good to go, but while he's doing that, he is also hindering some of his relations that, because there were people that were listening to her and that felt like what she was saying was actually correct. So you are still making some, hindrances in your relations. But I do, and so that's the part where I say that it undermines his beliefs. Number 6 says, compare and contrast the different ways in which both Morton's and Williams' values conflict with the Congregationalists and the Separatists, and what ways do his values conflict with those. And so the non-Separatist settlers in the colony, they were settlers who he saw as competing with the Separatists. So he saw the Congregationalists as being in competition with the Separatists. And so that Congregationalist denomination, it was one of the major denominations of the Puritans who settled in the English colonies. And so but oftentimes, if you look through his readings and stuff, he would offend the Separatists. And so that's where I see where his values will conflict with their values. Number 7, it says, how do Williams' views express America's later religious diversity and the separation of church and state? And so William Bradford helped to define, themselves, of future generations, that their Puritan settlement, as well as the endeavor in different plantations and stuff. And so there wasn't separation in England. We know that. That's the whole reason they came over here. And so he brought that religious diversity with him. And so he himself is the representation of this. And even though that still wasn't a popular term as far as, and not everything was implemented back then, he got the ball rolling with that. And then number 8 says, overall, which author do you think has the biggest impact on the development of American democracy? And so I think the biggest impact on America's development of democracy would have to be William Bradford. There's others as well that you could argue the point. But I found that through our readings that we did this week, as well as the videos and, podcasts and the different things that we listened to and read, I feel like he had a lot to say during his time. And I feel like I can see a lot of his thoughts that are still either in effect today or led to something coming into effect. But you can say that about others as well. But I just felt like I saw a lot of his ideas still being used today. And so that's what I have for this week's discussion. Thanks for watching.